record this right now. There we go. So years ago, I had the option of playing golf. I was new to the speaking profession. I had decided I want to grow up to be a full-time speaker like my heroes. And then I started thinking, okay, what are my hobbies? Well, I had a hobby of jogging, and I had a hobby of golf because a friend of mine was into it, and I had a little pull cart, with clubs.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, okay, if I take up golf, I'm going to want to be good at it. That means I have to practice. How long is it to practice? Minimum 3 hours, especially if you count the commute to and from the driving range. Okay. How long's a game? Minimum 3 hours. Okay. What do I have to have on me? Clubs, bag, everything that goes with it. And I have to pay to enroll every time. Or I have to join a club. And if I join a club as a golf member, it's like 300% higher than social member, or maybe, 1,000%. Nope. So I sold everything I had related to golf for $25 to a friend. I said, I'm done. I'll play a game once in a while, but I'm not going to keep the equipment. And I made jogging my sport. And I've jogged thousands of miles and never had to pay an entrance fee and never had to pack much gear. It's been a good choice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I've got friends who are golfers, and I'm sure you do too, who will tell you, oh, no, Jason, you've got to take up. I mean, this is where business is done. This is, it's a thing that it's a smart business to say, well, it is if you're willing to commit to golf and all the things that brings with it. But when you invite golf, you get all its neighbors. They pile into the van too.
Yeah.
So I've been a happy guy being a non-golfer. And enrolling at the country club out in California, Sherwood Country Club, our membership cost us, I think, $20,000. And that was the tennis membership because it got the fitness club included. Social was like $5,000. And golf was $376,000.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That was back before COVID. But wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it just takes your breath away. But the people that belonged there were people, like former presidents of the United States. Tiger Woods was a member, movie stars and people like that. But so
that's insane.
Strategically choose what you decide to do with your spare time.
Yeah. Definitely.
And by the way, something I did, and this is good for the recording, something I did while I was there, I moved from La Jolla, San Diego, after 20 years to Thousand Oaks. And I was in a gated community called Sherwood Country Club. And they had this big, fabulous, world-class country club. And I got an opportunity to join as a social member. Well, cool. So, I paid my $5,000 and we enrolled. And I didn't know anybody. I knew my realtor, and that was it. And the reason we moved there was it was closer to Santa Barbara where my new grandson was. And LA was not between us and grandson. And LA is a major impediment. So every week we were driving 2 hours through LA traffic, plus the rest of the 200-mile trip to Santa Barbara, and then back every week. And that was driving me nuts. So I said, look, we got to leave San Diego after 20 years. We're moving to the other side of LA. I don't know where, but I had a friend who recommended Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks. So that's where we moved. Okay. So we get up there. We don't know a soul. We join the country club as brand new social members. And I said to Paula, let's go to the club tonight. There's a barbecue or something. And she said, well, we don't know anybody. I said, yep, that's the point. She said, well, okay, good point. So we went and sure enough, met some people and some really cool things came from that. Well, I decided I like this place. I want to get known among the members, but I do not want to be the new kid on the block that everybody says, well, hi, how are you? Where are you from? Really, what brings you here? What do you do for a living? I didn't want to play that little dance with everybody. I wanted to get beyond it quicker. So I went to the general manager of the country club, Alexandra Quilty, and I said, I would like to sponsor a series of parlor discussions. She said, parlor discussions? I said, yeah, you have this big, gloriously beautiful room that looks like a library from the Biltmore Mansion. And it's a wonderful place for parlor discussions, but you don't currently host any. And she said, well, how would that work? I said, well, I'm really well connected among speakers and authors and celebrities and, people that are kind of big deals in their little niche. And I can bring them in, and not for a lecture series, but have just a circle of 18 to maybe as most 30 people seated in an oval at easy chairs and couches, and just talk about fascinating things. And she said, well, when would we do that? And I said, weeknight between 5:30 and 7:30 with a hard stop at 7:30, so that people will go to dinner at the tennis dining room at your country club. And she said, so we could do that as a member service, and you wouldn't charge us? I said, no, I wouldn't charge you. And she said, okay, we'll cater it, we'll promote it, and you run it. I did 39 of those over 4 years. And I brought in best-selling authors, astronauts, the guy that was the captain of the space shuttle mission.
Wow.
I had entertainers like rock and roll stars, and one guy that was a producer who had produced all of Ricky Nelson's music back in the 50s and did Barry Manilow and Neil Diamond and a whole bunch of others. His house was filled with Emmys and Grammys and things like, and platinum records and gold records. And so I had these people come in, and the way I would do it is every evening it was exactly the same. So you drive up to this mansion of a country club, and you park your car and you walk in the lobby, and the hostess greets you. You say, I'm here for Sherwood Parlor. Right to your left in the library, so people would turn and come in there, and it was just a big old comfy living room with a fireplace and bookshelves and all that. And so they would sit down, and there would be light snacks, and there would be a server who could take drink orders if they wanted, or they could have coffee or soft drinks. And I would greet them, and we'd all sit down at exactly 5:30. And I would say, welcome, folks. Here's my pledge to you. I'm Jim Cathcart. I'm the host. This is Sherwood Parlor. And my pledge to you is this. Every time we meet, we will start exactly on time at 5:30, not 5:31. And we won't wait until other people get here to be courteous to them, because after all, they're not being courteous to us by showing up on time. So 5:30, it's just like an airplane. It's going to take off whether you're in your seat or not. Okay. So, or a movie, it's going to start when it's going to start.
Okay.
And I said, and at 7:30, we're done. And if we're not, you can walk. And I said, that's my pledge. Now, those 2 hours in between, it's going to be open dialogue. And we have 2 rules, and these are non-negotiable. And I stated it that firmly. And they went, whoa. And I said, rule number 1, this is a living room. Behave accordingly. And they said, what does that mean? I said, well, if you're meeting in your living room and you need to go to the bathroom, you'll just say, excuse me, and go to the bathroom. Same here.
Right.
Don't say, well, I'm going to wait until the conversation reaches a, no, just get up and go to the bathroom. If you want to order a drink, just hail the server and say, could I have a glass of white, whatever it is, and they'll charge it to your member account. If you want to go over and get some food, walk over and get some food, for heaven's sakes. I said, now that's rule number one. Rule number two, be nice to each other. Our guest tonight is Jason Tharp. Jason is the creator of Walt Disney University. He came here from Mars at age 3, and Jason's going to talk for 5 minutes. And then all of us are going to talk. This is not a lecture, and it's not a let's ask Jason questions night. It's a fascinating subject being talked about by interesting people, because all of you in this room collectively are way more significant than our guest Jason or me as the host. Right. So looking around this room, there's a lot of power and intellect here. Let's tap it. Jason, what's our topic tonight? And Jason says imagery. I'm going to talk about cartoons as a form of thought. Wow, hit it. And so Jason, instead of doing, all the usual things he would do, would say, folks, when you think about something, what you're doing is you're isolating that subject in your mind, and you're either rolling it over through visualizing memories or whatever, or you're writing notes, or you're just looking out over the ocean and kind of reflecting on feelings connected to it or something like that. Well, what I do is I doodle. Lots of people doodle, but mine is a bit more structured and a bit more practiced than most. And let me show you a couple examples. Ding, ding, Now this, which it takes you 1 second to take in visually, could represent 5 hours of detailed thought if you were to start pursuing all the pathways that I've planted in this visual. And then Jason talks about that. And then we throw it open to discussion. And so I did that. And then at the end of the night, I would sort of summarize the main points that had left an impression and get their input as well. And I'd say, now, Jason and I are going across the street to the tennis clubhouse for dinner. We're going to sit at a big table, and you're welcome to join us, or, go do your own thing, or just go over there and grab your own table. But the meeting's over at exactly 2 seconds from now, done. And I'd stand up and start walking out. And the people say, well, don't do it. No, it's over. Let's go to the tennis clubhouse. Right. So I'm sitting there with Jason talking, and the other members had come over, not all of them, obviously. And they say, could we join you? Absolutely. It's on your own member account, but absolutely. And now that was fun. But what was more important, that was meaningful, because we talked about something fascinating that everybody could relate to. The next time, we're talking about the importance of music in society. And we've got the guy with all the Grammys and everything, okay? And the next week, we're talking to the general manager of a Four Seasons hotel. And he's telling about his experiences at different hotels around the world. And we're talking about what sets organizations like his apart from others in the world. And it's, of course, the mentality and the standards they hold themselves to. And so we do that. And every time it was something like that. 39 of those over 4 years. After about the 5th one, everybody at the club knew who I was. Everybody, all 600 members. And when I would go to the bar, the tennis clubhouse had a bar that was open 5-6 nights a week, whereas the golf side was only open on certain days. And I'd walk into the bar and meet friends, and the other people say, excuse me, aren't you? Yeah. Well, when's your next thing? Or others would come over and say, Jim, we didn't get a chance to talk the other night, but I was one of those 26 people at the parlor, and I just wanted to explore something with you. Hey, by the way, do you do speeches at company meetings? And well, as a matter of fact, I do. So I ended up getting business out of it, and referrals and articles in magazines and just invitations to social events. And well, one of the guys I got to know was the keyboardist and songwriter for the group Pablo Cruz, and his name's Corey Larios. And I ended up meeting him often and working out together in the gym. And Corey invited us over for social events and said, hey, how would you and Paula like to come to the LA County Fair, which is the huge thing. He said, we're opening for the Beach Boys. You can come with me and my family. So we went with him and his family, sat in the stands, watched the Beach Boys perform. And then he went up and did his thing as, Pablo Cruz. And then we all piled in a shuttle and went backstage on the other side of the big arena and hung out with the Beach Boys.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. And I got the highest compliment of my married life. We're back there with, Mike Love and all the Beach Boys. Mike Love's the sort of the main singer of the group. And their drummer for the last 20 years, unbeknownst to me, has been John Stamos.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I remember Dennis,
Yeah.
When he was the drummer, but he died. Well, John Stamos came in as the drummer, and for 2 years, Glenn Campbell was the bassist and the high singer replacing Brian.
Wow.
So this was really significant to me, because these are my heroes, and there's John Stamos, and he's a hunk. And so Paula was getting her picture made with him, and I was taking the picture. and so John says, is that your husband? She said, yeah. And he said, and he's got his arm around her. He said, is he going to beat me up? And she looked at him and she said, well, he could. And I thought, now, Lord, that's the highest compliment I can.
That's great.
Isn't that awesome? But just,
that is awesome.
There's wonderful life experiences, but they all grew out of a simple little desire to be accepted among a bunch of strangers at my new place. And I did something that was easy for me to do. And a lot of times my guests were out of town guests, and I'd have them stay at my home, or I'd put them up in a hotel and get together with them socially. But what a great experience. And it gave me a model that I could then use inside a company. And you can use this idea, just call it whatever you want, parlor discussion, a discussion circle, a mind meld, anything that works for the market you're going after. But just say, this is not going to be a lecture. It's going to be a gathering of minds. And the purpose of it is for all of us to talk about things that are important and fascinating, and go out of there a little bit better off because we did. And nobody's the expert, because everybody is the number one authority on their own point of view. And there's no winning or losing. It's not a debate. And that was the key. By the way, that requires a little bit of skill sometimes, because some of my subjects were subjects that were philosophical, like I'd have inventors or philosophers or whatever as my guest. And the subjects would draw out different schools of thought. And what I found over 39 meetings with a rotating set of guests, but some regulars that were almost always there, was that every subject by the end of the night would tend to settle into two camps, 2 points of view. And the 2 points of view were almost like positive and negative, but not exactly that. What I found, and I've reflected on this a lot, is that the 2 points of view were: group one believed that there's a loving creator, that we all came from some source that is in favor of life. And group two believed either there's not one, or if there is one, he's an angry judge. So that point of view, it's all about don't get hurt, don't do anything to piss him off, right? And the other point of view is live fully, be good, and find ways to help other people live fully and be good, right? So those two camps would pretty much divide the debate by the end of the night, but it never devolved to the level where they were adversarial. It was just, we were
Right.
pointing out, at this point, we agree to disagree on the further nuances, but what we can agree on is but up. Go forth and multiply. I'll see you next month.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that's very cool.
So
That
let's go ahead and comment on that, and then
no.
I want to switch subjects.
Well, it is interesting, like that mentality and how difficult that has been lately, like since COVID, of coming back to that, everybody having different opinions and that being okay, and like
Well,
we
and
don't have to
even
be
before COVID, when Trump got
right.
elected,
Yeah.
that's when his opponents decided to go ballistic.
Yes.
And so they went completely beyond anything sensible and started burning cities and police departments and killing people and all kinds of horrible things. And that settled into the beginnings of the COVID thing, and George Floyd and all that went insane, and so and it was a combination of factors, but it was definitely a societal shift away from
hmm
live and let live to live and kill the people that disagree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
It's
we've got
very,
some
I was actually,
going
I
back.
was coming from the meeting I came from. He and I were talking about how he, it's that mindset of people, how difficult it is to get people to see both sides, because we've been polarized by just this, like, almost just constant browbeating of, if
Yeah.
somebody doesn't agree with you, they're horrible people. And it's like, well, like, he's like, look, my viewpoints were this way at one point. And he's like, and I took the time to get to know me. And I realized that, like, I'm actually over here. And it was like, but he's like, then everybody, when I was over here, now think I'm an evil person because, and he goes, and I'm the same person. Like he's like,
Yeah.
it is that weird. Yeah. It's been, but you're right. It was like during that whole, his election, then we all had that the COVID stuff where we were all kind of stuck, and then
And
it
George
was like
Floyd, that was
in George Floyd, and it was like that was like
igniting spark. Yeah.
yeah, and we couldn't go anywhere, so it was like media was like, all right, let's hit them with all of it now, and just it was just
Yep.
beating, and you almost like felt like it was just relentless. Like in a lot of ways, that was like right around the time I was diagnosed, so I decided to unplug from everything news related. So
Good heavens.
I blocked all of my stuff.
You'd have
It
to.
was like, yeah, and I'm like, there's so much negativity, and it was like you just couldn't help it. It was just constant all the time, and then it is pretty amazing. But I've been able to keep that habit. Like I still, like, all of my stuff, if it pops up, it's
Yeah.
that's either political related or something. I'm always like, mute. I'm like, I've created a positive echo chamber versus like this
That's
all
the
negative.
thing. We choose our environment, and
Yeah,
most people choose it by default. Like you were commenting, if you don't know what, you don't specify what you want, you're going to get by default what they want, they being anybody around you. Most people tend to live their life by default. They show up at this stage and that's what they deal with. And they're not thinking beyond it to how they can evolve to the next level. They're thinking about it and still stuck in it. And that's why
yeah,
objectivity, which can lead to self-awareness, is so powerfully valuable. You really need to just pull yourself out of your own point of view occasionally on purpose to
yeah,
notice your own point of view and not assume it's right.
right, right.
That's the thing. I think it was Emerson or somebody like that said said that you don't really believe what you say you believe unless you've examined it and challenged it and it stood up to the challenge.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're not believing it, you're quoting it as if it came from,
Oh,
right?
that's a great, yeah.
Like I talked to someone once, we were talking about religion, and I said, what is your church? What do you believe? And the answer was, well, we believe that better, but what do you believe? Well, we
Hmm.
believe, excuse me, let's not quote, let's go from the original source. What do you think? And that's vital to know, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're just trying to please the grownups, basically,
Yeah.
trying to get
Yeah.
an A in what I believe class.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
I've told this story before, but I was once asked to deliver a sermon at a church. I had attended a little non-denominational Christian church out in the country outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, because a friend of mine who I knew through the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs, a guy named Bill Patrick, was the pastor. And I like Bill a lot. And so I drove out there on Sundays and attended his church. And one weekday he called me and he said, "Hey, you're preaching Sunday." I said, I laughed in your face. I'm not preaching on Sunday. That's absurd. He said, "No, seriously, Jim, I need you." And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter if you need me. I'm not qualified. Just pick a preacher, for heaven's sakes, not me, or a member of your church. I'm not even a member." And he said, "Jim, you're in charge of leadership training for the whole state of Arkansas for the JCs. You're a good speaker. I want you to fill in for me on Sunday. I got to be in Boston."
Hmm.
"Oh, Bill, what am I going to speak about?" He said, "I don't know. Pray about it. Think about it." So I thought about it. I called him back and I said, "Okay, here's my sermon. I'm going to talk about your spiritual growth," talking about personal growth, your spiritual growth. He said, "How are you going to do it?" And I said, "Well, it's got a few basic steps that are universal. Figure out what you believe, test it, challenge it, see if it stands up to the challenge. If it does, live it. Know what you believe, test what you believe, live what you believe." That's my sermon.
Hmm.
He said, "Beautiful, do it." And I did, and it went over great. And that's the last sermon I ever delivered. And that was in the 1970s. But think about that concept for a minute. Take away the religious context. Just think about it overall. Shouldn't everybody know what they believe and then test it
Yes.
to see if it's valid, instead of just
Yep.
quoting, picked it up because I respect Jason and that's what he believes? No.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then live it, for heaven's sakes, because if it's not affecting your actions, kind of doubtful you believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
By their works, you will know them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that is why I think I was expressing to you, like, where I feel like this one has been different. I've really been trying to figure out, like, signing up for, I've signed up for, like I told you, signed up for different things. And it was just like, it was just so something was missing. And like your program, like, I've watched all the videos now. I'm into your book now. I'm like, I've sent you my notes and, like, the homework and all this stuff like that, where I feel like, okay, so what, because I'm constantly trying to learn, like, what am I learning about myself during this
Yeah.
process, right? So I kind of got out paper and I started writing down all this stuff, and I think a lot of it is what you just described. Like, you understand what I'm actually trying to do, like, and it's brought in a way that makes me feel that I'm not on the fringe, or I'm not,
Yeah.
because I don't want to be somebody that just repeats somebody's stuff, like, all I really want to be is the guy that, this is my experience. If you can take some hope out of it, that's awesome.
There you go.
You can judge me all you want. I don't really care, because you didn't live my life. Like, so, like, judge away. That's on you, not on me,
Yeah.
like, and so, but it feels like there's so much out there that people are inundated with this just concept of, like, well, Tony Robbins says this, so this has got to be the way it is. And then next thing you know, Gary Vee comes online and says, hustle your face off. And now all of a sudden, 2 years later, after he broke a whole generation of hustle your face off, now he's empathy guy. And he's telling
Yeah.
them all, like, you have plenty of time. And I'm like, man, he broke that group just so he had future people to preach to. Right. And I'm like, I don't want any of that stuff,
You know, Peter
And
Drucker was considered back in the 60s and 70s. He was considered the father of the management of people at work, the father of American business organizational management, Peter Drucker. And they named a school after him in Chatsworth, California. And anyway, Dr. Drucker, when I got involved in training and development back in the 70s, I went to a conference in Chicago and he was a keynote speaker. It was American Society for Training and Development. We had easily 1,000 people in the audience, and he was up there on stage, and he was from Austria, and he came from some pretty serious credentialed roots, connected back with Einstein and Freud and people like that. And one of the people that dined at his parents' home in New York when he was growing up was Bernard Baruch, who was a famous investor and Wall Street person. And a lot of people followed his thinking about the markets and economy. So Drucker became a specialist in the management of people, wrote a book, something, I don't forget the name of it right now, but it's something like Managing People at Work. And when he stood up to speak that day in Chicago, he had a thick Austrian accent. He said, "I no longer teach the management of people at work." And everybody went, "Huh? What? You know, Walt Disney no longer does cartoons? What?"
right.
And he said, "No." He said, "Because I don't think that's the most important thing." He said, "Now I teach management of oneself."
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, "The first thing
That's
to
it.
know is know what you're good at.
Yeah.
And then you develop the strengths and you make the weaknesses irrelevant." And I thought, "No, God, I'm going to get this down. This is good stuff." And, I mean, that was
Yeah.
pure gold. He was approaching 90 years old at the time, but that was, wow, that was a big deal.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I think that's what a lot of what I've been experiencing or experienced going up into this part was like really, I've met I've told you before, I'm not a super religious person, but one person that somebody told me that I needed to talk to was this preacher that lives, in this town I'm in. And I was like, "Oh, jeez, I don't really," he's like, "You should really talk to him." And I messaged him and I was like, "Hey, Cody, like, look, I want to talk to you," but I said, it's not a Jesus thing at all. Like, I prefer, like, we kind of check that at the door. I just want to talk. And he said, "It's funny." And his response was great. And this is how I knew I was going to like him. He goes, "It's funny that you want me to check what I'm passionate about, but you want me to sit down and listen to what you're passionate about." I was like, "Okay, cool. I dig that," and
That was
we,
good.
yeah. And so we've sat down and we've had these like conversations, and it's been really amazing conversations. And and he talked about, like, he said, "You're a highly spiritual person." He's like, it's like, he said, "But I think people get confused by that. You have to pick one or the other." And I think that, for me, what I've kind of realized is that, like, my strength is in leaning into my flaws and leaning into the things. But at the same time, what I'm learning is I have to overcome a lot of what that other bad side of
Yeah.
the religious aspect of my life
Yeah.
made me feel shame and uh unworthy and all those things. So it's like right now I'm in this process of I know what I need to do, right? And I'm definitely aware of, and I am checking it, and I am really
Yes,
like
you
in
are.
that,
You're amazingly
like
so.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, that stage of, like, like the old world's dying, the new world's emerging kind of thing. And it's like
Mhm.
this back and forth. And it's like, okay, well, I kind of look at it, very much, and you can relate to this with the, your mentality of putting your shoes at the table and
Yeah.
going out every day. Very much so for me, like the gym, right? Like it was the same deal. Was like, I, I set out to beat brain cancer. Was like, I'm going to start with the gym. Well, now I'm going like, well, that exact same mentality will work in accepting exactly who I am. And it's funny because, like, I had some stuff on my calendar and I completely forgot about it. And I was going to message you about this because it was really mind blowing. So I did, we have the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus. It's called COSI.
Right.
And it's a pretty big deal. It's kind of like the Columbus Zoo is a big deal across the country with Jack Hanna and stuff. COSI is like that version. And the president CEO of it, I had done an event, their all company event and everything. And it was like, wow, we really hit it off. Like, I felt like he understood exactly where I was coming from. And he was like, let's get something I want to talk to you about speaking and stuff. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, cause he was having questions about like, how do you get paid this much to do this? And I was like, I don't really know how, but people pay me that. Like, and I'm like, but I'm happy to help you figure out how you can, do your business and, whatever, I'll share whatever.
Yep.
And so we'd have our Zoom call. This was like, I mean, geez, I don't know when this was, like May. We had a Zoom call this week. It was like Tuesday this week. And he goes, his Dr. B is what he goes by. I'm like, Dr. B, what's up? Good to see you. And he goes, man, I got to show you something real quick. He goes, this is my office. He goes, there's nothing on the walls, as you can see. There's like 2 posters. And he pans across and he goes, my team framed this, and it's my drawing that I do when I'm doing my keynote. And he said, that is the only other thing in my office. And he said, I want to know if you've ever thought about the museum sector. And he said, I'm on the board of this, this, and this. And it was like, he goes, this one is all science centers across the country. He goes, this one is all museums across the country. He goes, I'm on the board of both of them. What I'm asking you is, how can I help elevate your mission? He's like, because what you're doing is really important. And I told him, and I was just straight. And I just said, are you serious? He goes, yeah. And I said, huh. And I said, Dr. B, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to be vulnerable with you right now and tell you that this freaks me out. And he just kind of looks at me. I said, I've never had anybody that actually wants to help me. And I said, because all my career, I've had people that have taken stuff from me, that they see the opportunity of what I can do, and they know my desire to make it a reality. And so they've capitalized off that. So if it seems weird that I don't know how to respond to that, that's where it's coming from. There's 100% gratitude behind it, but I'm learning this for myself right now, that I just have to say thank you and stop at that and understand that you just want to help me. And so, as I said, as weak as it may sound on your end, that thank you on my end is massive, because it actually is the thank you to myself, letting myself know that it's all right to accept this from people, and that not everybody is out to. And I think a lot of what, has evolved over this last, couple months, like even finishing like the new book that, I sent you the first one, but the second one's already done too. So like I'm wrapping up that one. It's amazing how that book shifted from, I'm going to write letters knowing what I know now, to old me, to at the end, it was me asking old me to let me go now. And it was just like, that realization since then has been like from zero to just, I met you, and, I met all, and everything just started going. And it's like, oh my God, like, these things are crazy. And then he drops that bomb on my lap on Tuesday, and I'm like, oh my God, like, and he goes, I'm being serious. And then I think I told you 11/11 is when we're going to launch the Beyond Hope project.
Wednesday.
And he goes, and he says, he goes, hey, by the way, our next meeting for the board thing, he goes, it's in November. And I go, get the hell out of here, dude. And I told him, I was like, well, we're actually launching this thing on 11/11. He goes, I goes, 11/11 at 11/11. And he goes, oh, that's crazy. He goes, that's an angel number. And I was like, yeah. And I go, and if you look it up, it's about hope. It's kind of centered around the idea of hope.
It's Remembrance Day in Canada and Veterans Day Saturday. How about that?
Isn't that wild? And so
it would
and
be,
he's like,
the
next
cool would be if it were a Wednesday, because then you could play off of the sound Wednesday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. In China, that's the number one shopping day of the entire year. And it is called One's Day. And that has meaning in the Chinese culture, because numerology is a big deal to them. 8 is the miracle number, and 5 is perfection or completion or something like that. Anyway, they've all got things for the word in Chinese for four sounds like the word for death. And so that's the dark one, right? And
Oh, okay.
so and it's all silly,
Yeah.
but a lot of people put serious stock in it. And so that's the biggest shopping day of the year for online. And
Wow.
on Wednesday, people go on, what is it? Not WeChat, but they're big. It starts with an A, I think. Alibaba on the big
Oh, yeah.
website, their
Yep.
eBay, and zillions of dollars of business are done. So
Wow.
everybody, that's their Black Friday, that's their 4th of July sale, that's everything all rolled together. So it's
amazing.
Wednesday in China, and you may
Yeah.
be able to capitalize on that and do a Chinese release of your book or something at the same time.
Yeah.
By the way, if you do, recognize in advance that there is no such thing as a book being published in China without piracy.
Okay.
Piracy is instant. When a book is released in China, it is reproduced that day without paying the author or the publisher.
Wow. Wow.
And it goes nationwide. I've had people say, "Hey, I've got a copy of your book in Chinese." Really?
Wow.
I didn't know it was out in Chinese. Nobody told
Wow.
me. And one of them, they translated it to Mandarin, and the translator decided to write it like a novel, and they started making up things and putting it in there.
Oh my God.
Instead of just a straight translation, they just say, like Kitty, my translator. We were at Chengdu. We were on a bus ride to a river cruise I was going to speak on. And she said, "Jim, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Tell me about your first wife." I said, "Paula is my first wife, 53 years. I'd never been married before." "Well, no, in your book, it says you were married once before and had 2 children." I said, "No, we have 1 child." And I said,
Wow.
"Well, what else did it say?" And there were a bunch of things, and they're just thrown in. They weren't mean. They were just wrong. Lies.
Right. That's crazy.
I know. So be careful out there,
Absolutely.
right?
That's absolutely crazy. Yeah. Yeah. That whole game it's so, that whole publishing game, it's so funny because I know like right now it seems like everybody's really, especially in that coaching world, right? They're trying to get everybody to make books. Like it's write your own books now. And they're using Amazon KDP and they're doing all this stuff, and and it is that like one of the groups I was in, which I told you I ended up gifting it to the younger girl that really, and she loves it. If it's perfect for her. And I was like, great, I got what I needed out of it. I copied a couple of things that I thought were relevant, but like I gifted it to her and it's been great. But one of the last days I was in there, they'd fallen their thing, right? And they posted their book, and it was like, he goes, "This has to be illegal." And it was like people putting up the piracy books, putting the fake ones. And I commented, like, it's probably my last comment before they moved me and put her in. I said, "It's because when you try to game the system like this, and you're just giving away your free Kindle books to get ranked higher, these bots think that your book is important and they rip it off, and you're giving your book away for free. They're selling the workbook for $10, and they're the ones making the money off of you because you just want the label of bestseller. Like,
By the
make
way,
it bestseller."
that gives me an idea. I had this idea a little bit earlier. When you sent me the beautiful notes that you had made about the Acorns videos,
Yeah. Yeah.
it occurred to me that it might be fun to create a book together where you take those notes and just format them, like the videos, and let me fill in some content around that, and we co-author that as a book. and make it
Yeah.
available to the people that go through the course, or make it available to people so that they'll want to go through the course.
Yeah. You can, I mean, you could even do that as like, almost like so I did a coloring book where
Yeah.
I did it for kids. I was like, I call it growth mind series book. So on the right side, it is, so I try to split it out, right brain, right brain, left brain, right. So the right side was like the
Narrative and
coloring page,
images.
and the
Yeah.
left, yeah, and then the left side was like positive affirmation for the kid, or some activity for them to try, or a way to think it through what they were actually doing, right.
Mm-hmm.
You almost could do like that kind of thing where we can kind of take like the one side is almost like color in the notes so it
Yeah.
sinks in, it's an interactive, and it would help people that are, those creative people that
And you
the
could
creative and
even
the
make that
doodlers.
part of the deal. If it's black and
Yeah,
white, it's a coloring book. If they
yeah,
choose,
yeah,
I mean, they can just grab some highlighters and turn it
yep,
into a coloring book just for fun.
yeah, absolutely,
Adults.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Cool
yeah,
idea.
yeah. It's a very cool idea. Yeah, that's, I
If you
mean,
would
that's not,
like
and
to,
that's,
if it makes sense
yeah,
for you, format something that we could
yeah,
work from, and we'll just co-author it.
yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, that's not a big deal at all, because I'm going to go back to it. And kudos to you. I mean, you actually really spent the money, or if they paid you, I don't know which it was, but it was done really, really well. Like it
Thank you.
was, I was like, this is legit. Like it was like, this is, very good quality, and it was awesome. So,
And
you
what's
know,
amazing
well,
is I sat there like I am right now and just talked to the camera.
yeah, I could tell. That's what
Yeah.
made it good.
And
Yeah.
there were three people on the camera crew, and then a guy over behind me uh, doing content notes. And the three people on the camera crew, every once in a while, would say, "Stop, uh, we got lost for a minute." And I said, "Well, what did I do?" Nothing. We were caught up in what you were saying and forgot to do our part. Oh, okay. Now I'm getting
Yeah.
some, because when the production crew gets lost in your message, you got the it factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send you, after we get off here, I'll send you the link for the newest episode of my podcast that just went down, because
Okay.
that one in particular was, the guys were, I had two guests on there. One of them, my friend, he just went, oh my God, he went on a 20-minute tear talking about breathing. Because I was getting too close to something that was touchy for him. So he decided to steer it off, and it went this 20-minute. He was talking so much, I couldn't even get a in. And I'm like, dude, like you gotta chill.
He was
And
putting words out there as a barrier, building a fence, right?
oh my God, it was intense. And and Ben and Joe are the two guys that film my stuff, and they were like, well, we kind of run out of time. He goes, you could do your quick bumper, but we need to get one with just you. And I said, okay, just go out there and hit record. And he's like, well, are you prepared? And I said, sure. And I just put my iPad on the floor, and I just said, just go hit record. And I'm like, I'll just riff on something.
Love that.
And he came in, and he goes afterwards, he goes, how in the hell did you do that? And I'm like, oh, when you're not trying, that's how it works. It's like, I said, my goal is not to tell somebody how to do it. It's to be real with who I am and what my struggles are, so they can see themselves in it. And the only way to do that is just hit record and accept any flaws, anything that messes up, or anything or whatever. And then we had to do a bumper for my speaker reel, because he's trying to put it together, and he's taken a bunch, because I, like an idiot, didn't have a lot of stuff recorded. And the places I know now to hire an actual
Absolutely.
photographer,
Yeah.
and but I was trying to use some of the different parts, and he's like, we're gonna have to cut the little fillers and stuff. I was like, okay, it'll be kind of cool, because it'll look more homemade anyway at this
Mhm.
point. And he's like, do you have anything you want to say? I was like, nah. I'm like, just go hit the button, like let's just start recording it, and I'll just rip it out and see what happens. And they do it, and he comes in, he goes, do you know how many times we have to shoot those usually? And he goes, and you just knocked that damn thing out in one take. And
There you go.
I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know. Like I'm like, I don't have any training in this stuff. I said, all I know is I'm trying to talk like what I wish somebody would have told me when I felt the way I felt,
There's the
and
big difference there is the other people are trying to do a perfect performance and you're just trying to get their point across.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
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 And it's just,
By the way,
I want you to feel
wrap
seen.
up
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. I do have one question that's non-topical,
Okay.
but like the NSA stuff, I went and looked at their website. I'm assuming you're meaning sign up for the whole country, not the
membership.
local chapter, right?
Membership. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the whole membership. Okay, the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Now you
And
can go to
do you happen to know
local
this?
chapter. You can go to the local chapter as a form of shopping, just go as a guest and see if
Yeah.
you feel like that's home. But NSA is such a big resource and their digital vault is so amazing, of all the programs they've got, that I think it's well worth it. Plus,
Okay,
you're going
cool.
to love going to the conventions.
Perfect. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure before I got it
Okay.
because I saw like there was a
Yeah.
local
By
and there
the
was
way,
a big. Okay.
do
Perfect.
you feel comfortable with me posting this on our group Facebook page for the
Oh yeah, absolutely.
today's program?
Yeah,
Okay, because
absolutely. Yeah.
we're not on the usual Friday because of my travel, and
Yeah.
so we didn't have the team. But I felt like we covered some good ground, and I just wanted to make sure it wasn't too personally
Oh, yeah.
private to you. Okay.
No, all good.
Cool.
All good.
All right. Well,
All
have a
right,
great
Jim.
weekend, and I will
Yeah.
see you
Safe
next week.
travels.
And reach out on
Well, actually, next week Becky and I are going to be in Dominican
that's
Republic.
right.
So,
Yep.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
for
So I'll be
you.
enjoying this. I'll be trying not to get burnt.
Okay. Enjoy.
Have a great night. Safe travels.
Thanks.
Bye.